Wally, are we set to go?
Right.
Okay. Everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning and Development Committee meeting. It's Monday, May 28th. No, it's not. It's Tuesday.
Oh my God, they're all wrong.
They're all wrong. Oh, my goodness. It's Tuesday, May 28th, 2013. It is now just about 7:20. We have a quorum tonight. The first item on the agenda is approval of regular meeting minutes of May 13th, 2013. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any changes, corrections, additions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move to items for consideration. The first one is P1, approval of community partners for affordable housing home application. The Housing and Homelessness Commission and staff recommend the approval of a $277,685 forgivable home loan to Community Partners for Affordable Housing, CPAH, for the acquisition and rehabilitation of 2 housing units for rental that is affordable for households whose incomes do not exceed 60% of the area median income. Funding is provided by the Home Fund, which currently has a balance of approximately $640,000 in home entitlement funds. That is for action. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, and discussion. Alderman Rainey?
Well, I'm opposing this based on the lack of information. I got a call from Alderman Braithwaite earlier tonight explaining that, well, we didn't have all the information. Some questions that I have to do with the housing stock that we currently have available. And I'm curious to know, are all the NSP2 rental properties, first of all, purchased and developed and put out to lease, and are they all occupied? That's one question. Second question is the affordable housing stock that we're getting ready to add in Alderman Holmes's ward, the new construction. And I did see something here about something that was at our desk tonight about issues with housing that had been addressed, because one of my arguments was, look, it's been several weeks since we've heard about this the first time, and we said that we wanted to see the available properties that they were considering, and they haven't been able to secure 2 units of rental housing. I'm concerned that condominium units not be purchased and then rented out. That's a concern of mine. I just have lots of questions. So, one of the problems with foreclosures and with bank-owned properties, as the city well knows, it's very hard to break through the barriers that the banks put up to buy the homes. You would think when a bank owned a home, they would want to unload it quickly, but alas and alack, they don't know where the keys are, they don't know anybody who can show it to you, and so it's really very difficult. I understand that. And I am not concerned about not spending money because it's going to go back to the feds. I'm not concerned about that. I don't think we just ought to spend money because we have it.
Alderman Fisk, member of the committee, Peter Braithwaite, second ward alderman. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Alderman Rainey, you asked some excellent questions, and we do have staff here prepared to answer. I'm just here in front of the committee to voice my support for item P1. I've had an opportunity to speak directly with staff and get a lot of questions answered. And this is actually a 2-step funding process, and we'll talk about that a little later. But I just wanted to share that I don't know if many of you have had an opportunity to work directly with Rob Anthony. He lives in the 2nd Ward. He's here in Evanston. He's very active in his neighborhood group, and as you can see when you read the packet, he has a wonderful track record for doing projects in Lake Forest and also in Highland Park. And so I'm hoping that by moving to the 2nd Ward that it moves affordable housing. It adds the 2nd Ward to the focus that we've seen in the 8th Ward, Alderman Rainey, to the focus that we've seen in the 5th Ward, Alderman Holmes, and I hope that we continue to spread it all over Evanston. So With that, I think Sarah Flax will address your questions. Thank you.
Alderman Fisk, members of the committee. First, answering the question of the NSP2 properties, we have acquired, we have 5 rental units that we're still waiting to close on. That schedule has been pushed back. All of the...
let me just ask you, because I'll forget. You mean close on, we don't own them yet?
Correct.
To rent?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
We don't own the property.
They're a long way from being rented. Yeah.
Actually, this particular property will end up, because of the state it's in, it will be demolished, and then the land will be redeveloped because it is not rehabable. But that is our acquisition, gets us to our acquisition of rental. All of the rental units that are complete are occupied, with the exception of perhaps one, and I haven't seen if that last one was rented. They are renting up generally very quickly. We actually also are doing incredibly well on the for sale. We had a closing today. We have 2 more scheduled this week and 1 the next week. So we are not having properties sit, particularly rental at the 50% and below. NSP has different requirements. Rental housing is either for 50% and below area median or 120%. The 50% is rented up almost instantly all the time. We've actually renewed some of our leases on that.
This is 60%, right?
This is 60%, which is, so it's very much in that. And that is due to 2 things. One is in our consolidated plan, the need for rental for 60% and below is really significant. And the other thing is, one of the requirements of home, which is the source of funding, is that 90% of the units you fund in any year for rental are for households at or below 60% of area median. The rest can go up to 80. So we always start out saying everybody's got to be at 60 because you don't know in advance if you're going to have enough to do 80 until later in the year. Okay. So
tell us about, we give them the, what is it, 277,000? Is that what it is? I can't remember.
277,685 is the request.
So we give them that, and it's a forgivable loan.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say it's like, see, my basic problem here is the whole land trust concept. I just find it absolutely a bizarre concept given the Evanston market. I just don't get it here. I can understand it maybe in Robbins. That would be a great place to do land trust. How does it work with a rental? Will the corporation own the property and rent it out, right?
Yes.
Will the land under the building that they purchase be retained by whom? The current owner of the property? We have to make a deal with the current owner of the property?
No, also by the land trust. I'll actually get Rob up to describe
land trust
any
will
of that.
own the land,
And the
then
property.
There's another entity who will own the improvement.
No, they'll own both.
We have to
In the case of rental. I'll let
Sure. Thank you. So, I'm Rob Anthony. I'm Executive Director of Community Partners for Affordable Housing. And to clarify, Community Partners for Affordable Housing is not a land trust per se. We are a nonprofit community housing development organization that provides affordable housing for low-income families. We have a community land trust model where we use that as one tool or one vehicle where some units are placed into a land trust.
This one won't be?
No. We also do rental housing. We administer inclusionary housing for the city of Highland Park. And so there are various kinds of strategies we use. With rental, it's a flat-out rental. There's no... The only difference is that with this application, you'll be assured that with the home program, the rents have to be affordable for 15 years. And with this program, the rents will be affordable long after that.
All right. Will these 2 units be on the same piece of property? how are we doing? Are the houses? What are you doing?
So ideally, they would be it'd be a two-flat,
Two-flat.
ideally. But the way that it's structured is that if there are smaller single-family homes that would fit the economic model, that would be fine as well.
But you will not be purchasing condo units to rent?
Correct.
That's a guarantee?
Correct.
Okay. Why do I think, what happened to our land trust, the one that took 2 or 3 years to get one house? Where is that house? Who owns that now?
Right. Thank you.
Or the land?
Right. So the Citizens Lighthouse Community Land Trust, approximately a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, some of their board members and staff from the city of Evanston approached Community Partners for Affordable Housing and asked whether we would be interested in sort of merging or taking over their operations because they really had some staffing and capacity issues. We had a strategic planning morning, met with a lot of their board members, ultimately realized that it probably did make sense for us to take that one unit and put it into our land trust, and the Citizens Lighthouse Land Trust ceased to exist, so they closed their operations. So we are in the process now of transferring that land, so that will be in the inventory that we have, and they will no longer be in existence. But they do not have any part in our management or staffing. We're a completely separate entity. We do have an Evanston Advisory Board, which is a 15-member advisory board comprised of local all Evanston architects, financial representatives, lenders, community advocates. There are some people from the former Citizens Lighthouse Community Land Trust who participate on that advisory board to help provide some guidance on local Evanston-based issues. But it's an advisory board to our full board of directors. And we do have 2 Evanston representatives on our board of directors, too.
Are you not-for-profit?
We are, yes, absolutely.
And do you apply for tax exemptions?
For the properties?
Yes.
No.
And are you taxed at whatever rate the house is, whatever class the house is in?
Well, so with rental properties, it would be taxed on the rent rolls like they would with other rental properties. With home ownership, it would be taxed based on the resale restricted price. So
What about the property tax?
Right, yes.
So what about this $277,000? When do you expect to spend it? And what's the story about $1.2 million waiting in the wings? That part was a big surprise to me.
Sure. So SEPA, in partnership with the City of Evanston and Brinshore Development, applied to the Illinois Attorney General for some funds through a settlement related to the foreclosure issue. And we've received a call from their office, and they have initially approved us for funding to do actually 10 units. And
Who they?
The Illinois Attorney General's office. And so we are in final negotiations with them to figure out the details of that grant. And the one of the requirements of that grant is some match dollars. And so the home dollars through this application could be used as match. So these 2 units would be rolled into that larger 10-unit project.
But it's not $1 million. Is it $1.2 million your unit to match?
It's a little bit more than that.
Well, where are you going to get the rest? I mean, where are you going to get the rest?
That would be enough. The money that we're getting from
So it's not a match. It's really not.
It's not a dollar for dollar match. Right. It's a partial match. Right.
So why didn't our packet tell us that? I mean, I don't understand the bits and pieces
Sarah
of all
address
that.
that.
Is this a guarantee that you're going to, if we give you the 277 as a guarantee, you're going to get $1 million something?
I would not want to say that giving that is the guarantee. I think that SEPA's discussion with the AG's office, that is apart from that. We had talked with them specifically about we were already moving forward on a proper or on an application that fit very much into that. Could that be considered a part of it? But I don't want to say that it's an absolute guarantee based on this. I think this stands on its own merits as something to do with our home funds, and if it can then be used as leverage against the greater funding, that's, I think, good too. But it's not, we don't have absolute final anything from them. So the reason we didn't have this in the package is all of this with the Attorney General's office has been happening subsequent to when the package had to come out, and Rob has actually done significant discussion with them as to whether or not we can provide information at all.
Where are the 10 units are going to be new construction?
No, our expectation is it will be acquisition and rehab, very much like NSP. The whole point is we have, we've got 9 properties, for example, that Alderman Braithwaite and staff have been discussing. Many of them are single family. There is at least 1 2-flat in there. Some of them are on the market. One is on the market. The rest are in that lovely limbo that we had, and we would have to work to acquire them as they become available.
Well, is the requirement the same? They have to be bank-owned and vacant?
No.
So will we be in a position of evicting people with this?
No. I don't think that we would ever want to evict anyone. The ones we're looking at are vacant right now. But we aren't required to purchase them that way. One of the things that's very different from the HUD funding is that they don't have a lot of restrictions that we always have with our different HUD funds, but it gives us the opportunity. The census tracts that we're looking at, 8096 and 8097, south of Church Street, east of the canal to about Florence, they never run straight boundaries for census tracts, are the areas that, when we applied for NSP2, had not been hit as anywhere near as hard by foreclosures as 80-102 in your ward and 80-92 in your ward, Alderman Holmes. Those foreclosures have increased in that area. They have since become much more of a problem, which is why in the AG application, that was the area focused on. Actually, we said all the way from Church Street down to Howard we would look at to see where properties were available based on. The goal, again, is to get the impact of the foreclosures to address the impact of the foreclosures by returning homes to productive use.
So if we don't get the money, if you don't get the money, then it's going to be 2 units.
Right.
And getting the money is not, getting the $1 million plus from the Attorney General is not dependent on the 277. It's just that you would make it a bigger bang for the buck if we could. Okay.
Correct.
It's not. The Attorney General has not told us, as it was explained to me before, if we get this money, the 277, if we vote for it tonight, then it will be a positive for the Attorney General's releasing that money.
It is definitely a positive, but I don't want to say that it's an absolute. They are looking for communities to be putting money in to match theirs on a portion.
The reason we're getting the award is going to be made is because of what happened in the past, not because we're a generous community and we're going to. I mean, come on. I mean,
it's the need
because of the way foreclosures were handled and botched.
Right. So if I can make one comment on that. So there is a match obligation that we will have for the Illinois Attorney General Fund. So if we don't use these home dollars as match, we'll have to find another source of match.
But how do you define match? I define match as $1.2 million and $1.2 million, or $400,000 and $400,000. What are you defining? How are you defining?
Different programs have different match requirements. So the home program is 20% match. The Illinois Attorney General is not given a specific amount. Obviously, the more the better, but.
The more, the better for you. I mean, the Attorney General doesn't really care, probably.
Well, the more the match, the more units we can do. So they would prefer to see, as much.
So remind me of what I read about construction has to begin in a year. Was there something I read about that? With the 277 has to be spent? Or can it just hang out there forever? Until
The city has to commit home funds by the end of August. We have a longer time frame to spend it.
That's what I want to know.
And
what is our requirement for them to spend it?
what we put on them, what we're recommending is a 6-month period in which they must acquire the properties and then get them underway.
Get the money.
Right. We expect, and we didn't actually write this in, that the rehabs will take approximately 6 months, give or take, based on as you know, sometimes substantial rehabs can take longer.
But the money would be obligated for the purchase of the homes within
Yes.
6 months.
Yeah. And it would be spent home. You have a 2-year obligation period and a 5-year to expend, because sometimes the development takes, obviously, longer than another year or whatever past that. I expect we would have expended these funds certainly by end of 2014.
And also to clarify, the city staff have to review the property, to do an environmental review and an underwriting analysis. So it's not as though there's money given to us before the actual property is reviewed by city staff.
Never happened.
Okay.
Absolutely never happened.
Okay, Alderman Holmes?
I think I had my light on when Marina was talking about the concept of land trust, and everybody knows my feelings about land trust, but more so on the purchase rather than on rentals. And so I'm really happy that you went into explaining what can happen with that. And I'm just very interested later in hearing in terms of if you're going to purchase individual homes, in terms of how that can be much more beneficial to a purchaser rather than having it be in a land trust. So I can go ahead and support the concept of the rental for this $278,000.
But it's not going to be a land trust. It's going to be an outright purchase.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee. We've talked a little bit about this Attorney General grant process, and as probably many of you are aware, the Attorney General is not normally in the role of providing affordable housing grants. There was a national lawsuit against all of the major banks regarding the foreclosure crisis, and a number of states and their Attorney General were involved in that. The Illinois Attorney General was represented the state of Illinois in that, and for the Illinois portion of the funding that was made available, the Attorney General's office decided to hold their own application process. So I think, as you've heard from the speakers, this is not a HUD process. This is not something that's very standard. The Attorney General convened a committee of interested parties from around the state who do affordable housing. So where you normally would have very prescribed programmatic issues, they are somewhat less prescribed at this juncture. So again, we've not received anything. We're very hopeful that the Attorney General's office will provide this funding, but we've been receiving these indications, and our sense is that once those decisions are made, they'll want us to move forward expeditiously. So I just wanted to explain why you were hearing Attorney General this, Attorney General that, when that's not normally a branch of government that's talked about with affordable housing.
Yes, Alderman Rainey.
Could you tell us, my inclination is to support this at this point, but could you tell us how involved the Attorney General is going to stay on top of this, or is it going to end up being our staff who's going to oversee this? That is a problem for me. I don't like the way at all that the land trust group was handled. I thought we weren't helpful, they weren't helpful, it was a disaster. So I'm concerned as to how this is going to be overseen.
And I think every indication we have, again, is that the Attorney General is not in the affordable housing business, that they've convened a group to set parameters. I think they want to get the money out and they want it to have to be spent responsibly. I don't think we've gotten any indication that there would be any kind of onerous oversight. I think that there will be some reporting back to the Attorney General's office to satisfy that the money received from the settlement of the lawsuit was spent appropriately. Again, this is, Sarah, something we've been working on for the last several months. We moved very quickly to put together a local team to apply, and I think the strength of our application is because we moved so quickly working with the groups that have been represented here. So we're not anticipating this is going to be a difficult process, but we'll have to prove to the Attorney General that the money was spent as it was allocated.
But you don't really know how it's going to be overseen. I mean, you're just assuming, like I would assume, that Lisa's definitely not going to oversee it.
And again, I think that the Attorney General has convened a group of senior nonprofit leaders.
How can we read about that? How can we read more about that?
I think we have information. I know that in the initial stages, we reached out to several of the members of this group who we've worked with in other projects around the area. I know Mr. Marino was acquainted with a few, so was Ms. Flax. So we can get you that information. Again, I just want to make sure, as this is reported in the press, that we do not have any final confirmation, and where we remain hopeful that the Attorney General's office will deem it appropriate to make the allocation to Evanston.
And if anything should happen, God forbid, and they either cut our allocation or your allocation or what they've claimed you're going to be entitled to, is there still a plan to move forward?
With these two units, sure.
Yeah.
With these two units, absolutely, because these were in the works well before that. This is just
in the works. I mean, you don't have two units. It's
no,
just
but I mean
that
the application and the need to develop rental housing.
But if we approve this tonight, you can get in the works.
Absolutely, and we will.
Are you going to use this money before you get the other money? Or are you going to wait?
Yes, we'll start working immediately on the acquisition and identifying the properties and going through the process of underwriting each one as it's identified to make sure that it meets all the requirements, both of the city's requirements and then the home requirements of underwriting before any acquisition would be undertaken.
Okay, is there any further discussion in the committee?
Just to report back in a few months to let us know what's going on.
Certainly. We'll get, Alderman Rainey, members of the committee, we'll get the information you requested regarding the solicitation for funding.
Yeah.
We'll get that to you in the next few days, and then as that is made available, certainly if we are fortunate to get the funds, will be widely known, and we'll keep you apprised as the project progresses.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, this is for action. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to P2, Ordinance 36013, amending the zoning ordinance to rezone 1715 Church Street, 1703 Darrow Avenue, and 1711 Darrow Avenue from I-2 to MX3. The Plan Commission and City staff recommend approval of Ordinance 36013, a map amendment to rezone the property commonly known as 1715 Church Street and 1703 Darrow Avenue and 1711 Darrow Avenue from the I-2 General Industrial District to the MXE Mixed Use Employment District, and that's for introduction. Is there a motion?
I move approval or introduction.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We're at P3, Ordinance 37013, amending the zoning ordinance to rezone 2153, 2143, and 2145 Ashland Avenue, 1515 and 1523 Payne Street, and 2150 and 2156 Green Bay Road from C2 to MX3. The Plan Commission and City staff recommend approval of Ordinance 37013, a map amendment to rezone the properties commonly known as those that I just read, from the C2 Commercial District to the MX3 Mixed Use Employment District, and that's for introduction. Is there a motion?
Move introduction.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? P4 is Ordinance 53013, granting a special use for a resale establishment at 1104 Davis Street. The Zoning Board of Appeals and City staff recommend the adoption of Ordinance 53013, granting a special use permit for a resale establishment for office furniture at 1104 Davis Street called Not Fade Away. The applicant has complied with all zoning requirements and meets all of the standards of a special use in this district. That's for introduction. Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay. Pardon me?
That's four. That's Ward
It's
four.
it's in fourth ward. Right. Any discussion? Alderman Wilson, do you want to say something?
I spoke to the applicant, and I don't foresee any negative impacts. You have a business in the neighborhood, anything concerning you? Of concern?
No.
Okay.
Okay, it's for introduction. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're going to P5, which is Ordinance 50013, amending various portions of the City Code in order to regulate vacation rentals as a type of B&B establishment. Staff requests consideration of Ordinance 50013, which would regulate vacation rentals as a subset of B&B establishments. Consequently, any vacation rental could operate only pursuant to a special use permit issued by the City Council after recommendation from the ZBA. This ordinance was introduced at the May 13, 2013 City Council meeting and returned to Planning and Development Committee for further amendment, and that is for action. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
You've got mail.
Okay. Apparently, Alderman Holmes has mail. There are two people. Let's see. Wait. There are four people signed up to speak on this. Let's take citizen comment. You'll have 3 minutes. And Maureen O'Donnell, Howard Handler, John Fell, and Don Schollenberger.
Hi, Alderman, Fisk, and committee members. My name is Maureen O'Donnell, and I live at 2509 Ashland, and I'm representing a number of neighbors on the 2500 block of Ashland. The lawyers on our block, thank you, by the way, for continuing to work with us. We've been slogging through this for 7 months. We appreciate your efforts. The lawyers on our block remain very concerned about the proposals permitting landlords to be off-site. And the lawyers also point out it would allow someone to rent a home without being on site for a full year. Someone in Chicago or Riverside or Gurnee or wherever could buy a home in Evanston, conceivably, then rent it out for a full year to various tenants without being on site. And as you know, based on some of the stories we heard from residents of Dobson, out of sight, out of mind, there were a great deal of problems on Dobson because the landlord was off-site. And our lawyers say that would amount to a commercial enterprise that flouts zoning. So again, we've been coming here for 7 months. There's been a great deal of debate. We're getting there, and we just want these holes plugged so we can come to a sensible solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I ask if there's discussion going on in the audience to please step outside and have your discussion so that we can concentrate on citizen comment? Mr. Handler?
Thank you, Howard Handler with the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors. We too want to thank you for your thoughtfulness on this issue and for including some exemptions that we've encouraged you to take a look at. But still, we think that this ordinance uses a sledgehammer to pound a nail. Short-term rentals, by and large, outside of an isolated property, have not been a cause for concern for staff, city council, and residents. Yet this ordinance casts far too wide of a net. It pulls the rug under all Evanston property owners, making it near impossible for Evanston residents to exercise their right to rent their property for less than 29 days. Ironically, the more one rents their property on a short-term basis, the burden decreases, because the proposed regulation can be an investment for those that want to rent their property on a regular basis, those that are renting them for 100 times a year. But for those property owners that need or want to rent their property one time in even 20 years for less than 29 days, the burden is overwhelming, including, but not limited to, and this is as far as we understand it, applying, paying a fee, submitting floor plans, maintaining locks that open from the outside, and even providing soap. We appreciate the leaseback and renovation exemption, but the other one catch-all exemption based on staff's interpretation of a hardship leaves too much discretion and is ripe for arbitrary decisions. This ordinance can be much more targeted toward problem properties or properties being run as quasi-hotels, but don't make your residents plead their case to the city staff to use their property for very routine, mundane use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Fell and then Don Schollenberger.
I was here a few months ago on a Saturday meeting, and I have a vacation rental. And I know some neighborhoods had some problems, but I've had nothing but success and great tenants. And I live in the building. I bought the building because it's a rental building, and I thought I could rent it out as I saw fit. And I feel unfair that I find out now that I'm going to have to go before you and get a permit or anything. And here I live in the building. We've had people come from all over the world to enjoy some of Evanston's things, visiting Northwestern, and they can't always stay for 29 days. And I know that several of you I've talked to use like VRBO when you travel to communities and find it really a great opportunity. And I think people coming into this community should have the same opportunity. And I just think to have a far-reaching ordinance that affects people like myself is really unfair. And I feel that there should be an exclusion for owner-occupied buildings that allow short-term rentals.
Thank you very much. Don Schollenberger.
Actually, Howard said most of what I would have said anyway. I guess the big thing that I look at on this is, particularly on this with the hardship situation, it's simply too vague. There needs to be some guidelines here, and I don't see them as to how this is to be interpreted. And I don't think this is something that people need to be or be left to people's judgment. I think they need, obviously everything's not black and white, most things are gray, but still you need some guidelines, and you really don't have it here on this hardship situation. And that's my biggest personal concern about this particular piece of legislation, and I really think they need to go back to the drawing board and maybe try to spell this out or try to work with somebody to come up with something at least that's more, that we'd be more able to discuss on.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this matter? Okay, we'll go to committee discussion. Alderman Wilson, then Alderman Nguyen, whoever was first. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have two issues that I think this is significantly improved, but I have two issues that I think have been raised by the community, and I'd like to just throw them both out there and then have us discuss them. I think the issue about having someone owner occupied, I think is understandable but problematic if you're renting your condo, because you're not going to stay there in your condo along with the guests. But I do think that there should be something that requires folks to have a phone number that's posted in the way that we have rental buildings that have a phone number that you can reach someone who manages the property, because otherwise that we're leaving the management of the property to our police and fire and property standards folks. So I would like to put some language in to this indicating that there is some phone number posted and there will be someone who will answer that phone. Otherwise, the community is left with calling the police department for problems, and we don't want to have that happen. The second issue, I think, is one that's been raised to me in emails, and I think as Mr. Handler raises the point, which is if someone wants to do this once, we're putting them through a lot of bureaucratic process to do it once. And I would entertain having a one-time exemption in this, in the ordinance. So, I mean, I think what we're really trying to get at are the folks who are doing this on an ongoing basis, not someone who decides we'll do some type of swap with, some family in Europe for a week. We'll swap each other's houses or something like that. I understand that issue. So I think we should add in a one-time exemption in that sense.
Okay, Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, and I agree with that one-time exemption and Alderman Nguyen's comments. Someone else, I think maybe others have received this, but somebody has drawn my attention to a potential concern, and that is the whether or not this will apply to existing properties that are already operating. And I have some concerns about that because I think we're going to need a legal opinion on whether or not this will act prospectively or will apply retroactively to existing businesses.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Grant for our Corporation Counsel. With respect to the point that you just raised, Alderman Wilson, I believe it's my view that this ordinance would take effect upon passage. So any new rental going forward would be within the purview of this particular ordinance as drafted.
An existing?
Any new rental at any address anywhere in the city.
But existing rentals would not fall under this? Is that what you're saying?
I think we would need to allow for the effective date to come and pass. And if there's a concern about retroactivity or somebody getting caught, take for instance the exception for a sale of a property and somebody's already doing it right now. If there's an issue there, then perhaps there may be a way of addressing that with a date certain, a farther out effective date. But my view is that this ordinance, with the regulations as currently phrased, would take effect for any new rental as of the effective date, either if it's, the customary effective date 30 days upon passage, or if there's some date certain that the council wished to set as a clear point of demarcation.
Okay, I don't think that fully answers the question. I know what you're saying, but maybe everybody else doesn't know what I'm saying.
What does it do to the Ashland property? I think that's what.
If there's a new rental that goes in there, if they list for a new period, a new block of time, that would come under the coverage of this proposed ordinance after the effective date, as of the effective date.
Okay, so do you mind?
No.
Sure. So for instance, let's say the effective date is June 30th, and they have someone, for instance, on the Ashland property who is renting it for the week of June 25th through July 5th. Okay. You're saying that we can't bar that rental because it's already in progress as of the date of this ordinance.
The ordinance would be prospectively applied as of the effective date. So if something is caught in between there, this ordinance would not apply to that particular rental because half the rental period.
Right. Got that. Okay. So then the Ashland property is the owners are planning to rent it August 1st to August 15th. Then what applies to that?
If the effective date is
and the effective
anytime,
date is June 30th.
Then this ordinance would apply.
So, and then the owners of that property would have to have come in and applied for special use and received it.
Correct.
In order to go forward and rent the property August 1st through August 15th.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, and I fully recognize this is sprung on you on the spot. Okay, so I'm just going to point blank ask. I want to be sure that that's the answer, and if you haven't had time to look at it fully, I think we should explore that and make sure it's right, because it seems to me that there might be an argument that this would be analogous to, let's say there's a pet store. A pet store has been operating for 25 years, and we decide to make pet stores something different. The pet store would basically be grandfathered in, and something new wouldn't apply to that pet store. So I want to be sure, 100% or 99.9% sure, that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where we cannot enforce it against the existing businesses.
Well, of course, I can't ever speculate to every conceivable challenge that would come to a city ordinance. But the way I would view this issue, as you pose it, Alderman Wilson, is that every rental period is a new rental period for a home. And every rental period that goes on this continuum prior to the effective date would not be subject to this ordinance. After the effective date, that is a new rental. It is a new rental for a new block of time, for probably new tenants, for new reasons. And I think that from an enforcement standpoint, that gives everybody a clear understanding of the effectiveness of this ordinance, what it covers and what it does not cover. I'm of the view that in this type of situation where we're talking about transient rentals, that it is a situation where that particular residence, whatever the owners decide to do, however they decide to rent it out, that's always in a state of somewhat flux. The rental period can fluctuate. It could be weekly, it could be daily, but I think that the proper way to view this, and really the common sense way, and I'm sure others will differ from this interpretation, is that those rentals going forward, each rental is a new act. It is a new action by that particular owner of that residence. It's a new transaction.
Yes. Yes.
Judy.
I'm sorry. Okay. Alderman Rainey.
Grant, are we going to consider a different system for zoning board of appeals for this kind of thing? Because as I sit here thinking, you wouldn't want to, I mean, getting a special use takes a while. So you wouldn't be, putting a ad in vacation rental by owner for July as we're having this discussion, thinking, I'll just go and stop over at City Hall and apply for a special use and get it, because that's not what happens. So I'm thinking a lot of people probably are going to flood the Zoning Board of Appeals with appeals for their property to be a vacation rental by owner, because most people have never thought about doing this probably, and now we've alerted everybody to the fact that you can rent your house out and it'll be legal. All you have to do is get a special use. So I'm just thinking, what happens if they start backing up?
Well, Alderman Rainey, I think you do touch upon the issue, two issues. The administrative interpretation and implementation of this proposed ordinance, and then the enforcement issue. And I think that all of these concerns have been raised in this venue many times, and that, I think, is something that I've been quite candid with this committee and with the council on, is how does the back end mesh with the way the language is written, understanding that there probably will be, I don't want to characterize it as a flood, but it will open the door.
Just 10.
It will open the door. The docket of the ZBA will be full. The zoning administrator staff will be very busy. They'll be hopping. So again, the issue here beyond the four corners of the proposed ordinance is that enforcement and implementation piece. And I think I can be quite candid with the council, and I've been in the past. It is going to be challenging. It is going to be extremely challenging. How staff is able to work that through, I think, is going to be an ongoing concern. I realize that the legal department and community and economic development, we're certainly committed to working with every applicant and with the residents to provide good customer service, be responsive and responsible, but it is going to be a challenge.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm just wondering if maybe we shouldn't consider like a subcommittee of ZBA for vacation rental by owner applications. Just a thought. And the mayor could appoint, recommend 4 or 5 people or 3 people, and to help out with that.
Could I ask one?
It might not be. Maybe nobody will apply, but I doubt it.
Could I ask one question? Is each individual rental block of time a special use? Or can someone come in and does,
Annual.
I'm coming in once a year?
It would be on an annual basis,
Okay,
correct?
so if someone is applying now and they have a block of time before this goes into effect, and the yearly time, it begins on July 1st, is that correct? And goes from July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2014, for example?
Well, right now it would be July 1st, but as we're talking about the implementation piece, it may be wise to back in a longer out effective date to deal with some of the issues that are being raised by the committee tonight.
Okay, so folks would have to come in front of ZBA once a year. Is that correct?
No, it can be on a rolling basis, but I'm thinking for the first point of implementation that an effective date sometime, I mean, if we're essentially looking at June 1st right now and a typical special use takes anywhere between 60 to 120 days, roughly, we could be looking at perhaps 4 months. I'm not sure, but I think that would at least address the initial application round that I think can be expected by staff. But I would think that the special use can then go on an annual rolling basis so they don't have to.
Because I was just wondering if there can be a special meeting of ZBA, one meeting, everyone who wants a special use for vacation rental can come in. Alderman Rainey, then Alderman Holmes, then Alderman Nguyen.
The annual meeting for special use that's too scary for me.
Okay.
What I would suggest is we do this like we do sidewalk cafes.
Right.
The first one is intense. You get screened by staff, etc. You have to be approved by the council. If there are no complaints or issues during that year, why make them come back again? Maybe people wouldn't even know that there was a vacation rental. Don't forget, we're making these rules because of the problems, not because of people like our friend here. So I'd rather see us do it that way. Maybe it would be a 3-year special use or 4-year. Maybe the people would move away, and so we'd need to know, that you have to start over again. But that's how I would do it. If there's no problems, there's no reason putting somebody through another special use. And I don't even know how we can call it a special use if we make people come back and be approved each year, because that's not how special use works.
Alderman Holmes, then Alderman Nguyen.
Well, I guess I'm concerned about those people who we don't even know who are running vacation rentals now. Some of them have been good enough to come in and identify themselves, and and we know who they are, and they will comply. But we have no idea how many more are out there, and how will we know? And what will happen with those unless there's a complaint from neighbors? I mean, that's the only way we would know about Ashland. That's the only way we knew about Monroe, is because there were complaints. So, Director Farrar, I think you're absolutely right. This is not going to be easy. This is a real challenge.
Alderman Nguyen?
Concerned.
Well, I think you're right, Director Farrar, that having a longer effective date will allow the ZBA to adjust to granting these special uses. For instance, maybe we make the effective date 4 months from now, so that people who are coming in, as you say, Alderman Holmes, to be correct, will have time, and the ZBA won't all have one giant rush at once. But where does it say in here that, in the ordinance, that these are going to be annual special uses? That's what I'm confused about.
Well, it doesn't say that. I think that, and perhaps I would defer to Mr. Marino on that, in terms of the way the special use is initially considered. But there's nothing in there that says it's annual.
I think it's in the memo, though.
Is it in the memo? I'm sorry, I missed that. But if it is annual, then I absolutely agree with Alderman Rainey that using the sidewalk cafe method is the correct thing to do, that you don't get it renewed if there's a problem, but otherwise, you have a serious review initially to make sure that you're worthy, and then then after that, it's yours to lose. No, but we are going to look at it carefully.
Well, that's an excellent point that the committee is bringing out in terms of analogizing it to a sidewalk cafe. And again, there's certainly analogous provisions that are implemented by staff relative to sidewalk cafe that could be adapted and reused for this particular purpose. Again, that's going to require some nimble and nuanced thinking by staff as we work through. As we work through on the enforcement and implementation side of things. So I think that's an excellent point that the committee is raising.
Okay, Mr. City Manager.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I think what I hear the committee saying is that there's a couple of additional tweaks you'd like to make. One would be a requirement for a phone number of management of property be posted and you've not talked about this, but perhaps a one-time exemption. Right. And so if that would be reasonable. And then I think the third is the issue of an effective date, and Mr. Farrar, I think, has walked through the issues there. So what I'd like to propose is perhaps that you consider a motion, the direct staff to come back with those changes regarding the phone number, the one-time exemption, and the effective date. We'll make those amendments, and then we will also come to you with some proposed regulations as to how this would be implemented. We can be back to you, I would imagine, at your June 10 meeting or your June 24 meeting. Mr. Farrar, do you have a preference at this point?
Whatever is the committee's pleasure.
I think it's in everyone's best interest to be done with this as expeditiously as possible. So let's shoot to come back on the 10th of June. And so, Madam Chair, if you would entertain a motion to that effect, we'll come back.
And then the special use would run with the owner, not with the land. Is that correct?
It runs with the use. Yes, it runs with the use.
Well, what if a new owner wants to continue the use?
Well, that's a new owner, so they would have to come.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Pardon me, Alderman Rainey?
Would this be recorded on the title, this special use?
We would come back with those regulations. I think the analogous sidewalk permit is a good one, and we'll go back and look. And I don't believe that runs with the title.
I'll have to look into.
But we'll come back on your June 10 meeting with regulations that will cover that.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Would someone make a motion, please? Would someone?
I move we direct staff to, in keeping with the discussion we've had this evening, to incorporate language that permits a one-time exemption for a vacation rental, a management phone number that would be posted, and
the effective date.
And that the staff comes back to us with an effective date that would accommodate the schedule of the ZBA.
What about the times for the annual application for a special use, one time?
And that the staff also look at the sidewalk cafe regulations and come back to us with a recommendation on that.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you very much. Well, that was interesting. Like jumping off the cliff here. Okay, we're going to move on to items for discussion. PD1, which is Ordinance 54013, amending subsections 6-4-1-14 and 6-18-3 regarding occupancy of dwelling units. Staff submits for discussion and possible referral to the Plan Commission, Ordinance 54013, upon request from Alderman Wilson. That's for discussion tonight. And there are folks who have signed up to speak on that. Alderman Wilson, before discussion. Okay. Two people, Howard Handler. I'm sorry. Howard Handler and Don Schollenberger. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak on this? Okay. You'll have 3 minutes apiece.
Don Schollenberger just whispered in my ear that he's going to take a pass on speaking, but I'll speak. Thank you very much for raising this to the level of the P&D. It's a very important issue that I know a number of parties are concerned with in terms of fair housing, affordable housing, access to community services. The position of the North Shore Barrington Association of Realtors has consistently been that occupancy standards should be the same, regardless if you're blood related or not. That being said, we certainly see this proposal as a very good step in the right direction. We do have a few points that we've provided you today, and that I'd just point out that we do ask that if it is upon application, that the ordinance includes that it's a one-time application and not an annual application, to be able to house upwards to 6 unrelated people in a R3 or above. For the construction and modification of units to ensure that they were done properly, again, we ask that it is only related to the bedrooms itself, and we don't want a situation where staff say a fence was installed a decade ago without the proper permit, so we're going to deny you the ability to house X number of unrelated people. The other thing we want to point out is that the number of bedrooms, it's in the R3 and above district. It is recommended that the number of bedrooms are commensurate with the number of unrelated people. We ask you to consider that people can live 2 to a bedroom, especially if it's a very large bedroom. The other thing that we'd point out is that, ironically, 4 unrelated people could live in 2 bedrooms in a R1 or R2, according to this ordinance, if we read it correctly. But 4 unrelated people cannot live in 2 bedrooms in an R3 or R4. For Section 2A, when it deals with family type A, we do ask that either civil unions are included or that there's some sort of interpretation from the legal department or reference to another ordinance that already considers civil unions on par with marriage. Just lastly, we'd ask you to take a look at family type B with unrelated persons with children. We'd ask you to consider raising that from a maximum of 2 unrelated persons to 3 unrelated persons. And just to give you one example of a million examples that you could come up with, a married couple with 4 children and a friend's child living with them while the mom serves overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan would be allowed under the current law, but an unmarried couple with the exact same situation would not be able to care for a child whose mother is serving overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan. So we ask you to take a look at those few suggestions. They are on paper in front of you, and again, we appreciate that this is making its way to you guys.
Alderman Wilson.
Thank you. And a purpose today, of course, is to suggest referral to the Plan Commission so that they can take a closer look and hear everyone's input and get some further thoughts. But basically, what I wanted to try to do was to focus less on the nature of blood relationships and more on the nature of an actual physical structure of the building. So in other words, if the building is appropriately constructed for the use, it should be usable for that purpose. Some people have voiced concerns to me about some of the larger occupancy numbers, 5 or 6, and the ordinance as I've proposed it does not provide for that in single-family homes. Those are for apartments that are laid out that way. So in other words, if you have a 5-bedroom apartment that's built that way, theoretically 5 people could live there. But if it's 5 or 6, the landlord would have to go and get certification from the zoning administrator to ensure that it's safe and it's properly constructed. And if it's not properly, well, strike that. If permits weren't obtained, for example, if it was built 65 years ago and they didn't have permits, but it's properly constructed, there are inspections, it's safe, that they could obtain the certification. So that's kind of what some of the thinking is behind that. But didn't want to try to totally go through the whole thing, but more just get this on the table and get it out to the Plan Commission for further review.
Are there any other comments on this? Okay, could I have a motion to refer this to the Plan Commission, please? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's going to the Plan Commission. When will it go to Plan?
Be the July meeting.
Okay, and that's,
Second Wednesday in July.
okay. Alderman Rainey?
Does this have to go to the Plan Commission?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, are there any items, or any communications, City Manager?
No, ma'am.
Then may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Okay, City Council will begin in 5 minutes at 8:30 or so.